Hey, this is Samantha Salmon, certified integrative nutrition coach and coach of the Raw Food, host of the Raw Food Health Empowerment Show. I am here with a premiere video because as you're watching this, I'm probably at the beach somewhere enjoying the weekend. But I wanted to talk this weekend about body image and body positivity and really highlight two Black women that are really doing a great job of being great vegan advocates, I feel. Lizzo and Tabitha Brown. We've seen, between the both of them, we've seen some great vegan and raw vegan advocates who are changing the way we look at what it means to identify as a healthy eater. And they're putting it on the map, right? Tracy McQuarter of 10 Million Black Vegan Women and Buy Any Green, she always says that, Black women are the face of veganism because they're the fastest growing group. And what you see with Lizzo is someone who's doing raw veganism, and she's doing it while she is appreciating the body that she's in right now. She's doing raw veganism. You see her doing partnerships with Peloton and other things because she's interested in health. She's interested in healthy habits, which is what I want to uplift right now because ultimately that's really what matters, right? Is healthy habits and not this demonizing of our body that's actually functioning well. We are very blessed to have, some of us who are complaining about our bodies. And I know I used to be in this boat where even with certain things with my body that I didn't like, but really ultimately it comes down to my body actually works. Like my organs are function, my systems, the cardiovascular system is working, the respiratory system is working. I got COVID twice. I bounced back. I'm still here. I don't have any repercussions from that as far as I know right now. um I mean, me not being it like my memory problems I've always had since I was a child. Okay, so that it is what it is. So I'm not going to fully blame that on COVID, the brain fog, and all that because I think there's a lot of things that we as a society could be doing better that I noticed, and me personally, I noticed. So I'm also on my own health journey to make sure that I'm staying consistent with certain things. But also I want to uplift, Tabitha Brown. So Tabitha Brown, she's vegan. She got into veganism for a health reason, right? And um, the way she approaches veganism right now in her life is in a way that it's really accessible to the majority of people because she's not pushing it on anybody. It's not like her thought process of all the benefits of veganism is not there. She understands the consequences of not being vegan, right? But she's not pushing it on anyone. And so people are more receptive. Plus she's talking about really whole health, like more about the emotional, the mental, and like the perspective of being a Black woman vegan in this society and how you need to think for resiliency if you're trying to have a really a full quality of life, not just physically quality but like emotionally, psychologically quality of life. So I really appreciate the body image and body positivity and just the way they are representing veganism to the masses, right? So recently, where this whole topic for me to even discuss with you came up is I was reading a couple articles over the past few months about Lizzo and some partnerships that she's doing, and how how we see body image, right? Because every time they bring up Lizzo, there's always something they have to say about her body. And also some other articles around diet culture and how it affects fat Black women. Now, one of these articles, I believe it was maybe CBS News had an article about fat shaming and race weight and body image. But a few of these articles, they basically had a running theme, and a lot of them include this book by I think her name is Sabrina Strings. I know her last name is Strings. I can't remember her first name, but her book is called Fearing the Black Body: The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. And I'll make sure the link to that book is in the description if you want to check it out and read it. It came out in 2019. I was really curious about this because with the title Fearing the Black Body: The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, I'm not going to lie. I was like, what exactly is she trying to get at here? And one of these articles was saying that she was arguing that and this is a quote, I believe this is from like a Healthline article, that the contemporary ideal of slenderness is at its core racialized and racist. It goes on to say, indeed, it was not until the early 20th century, when racialized attitudes against fatness were already entrenched in the culture, that the medical establishment began its crusade against obesity. An important and original work, Fearing the Black Body, argues convincingly that fat phobia isn't about health at all, but rather means of using the body to validate race, class, and gender prejudice. Now, my interest was piqued, you understand? So I read this book, and I not only did I read the book, but I went to YouTube to see how the book was being discussed. And I even watched some critiques of the book from people who are historians. Miss Strings, who wrote this book, is a sociologist, and the way it's written, you feel like you're in college, honestly, reading this book. I felt like it was really dry in the beginning. But ultimately, the only thing I got from the book was that, pop culture dictates beauty, but then in my mind, like, you can dictate beauty, right? Because she talks a lot in the book about like Harper's Bazaar and some of these magazines where someone is leading, maybe they're like the editor, whatever, but they're leading the creative content. And and even before them, there were artists who basically decided what was beautiful, put it out there, and other people agreed, right? For something to be fact, it has to be, we have to comply, right? The only reason we agree that the sky is blue and not black, right? Like even the concept of blue and black is something that is taught to us. So, somebody decided this is what blue means, this is what black means, and like the colors, and other people agreed, okay, this is blue, this is black, we will comply. And because we all comply, now it's fact, right? So when it comes to beauty, you can decide what's beautiful. Like, I'll never forget, like, my mom told me that, my mom is from Catadupa, which is near St. James in Jamaica. So it's like the country of Jamaica, and she was born in the 50s, right? She said growing up in Jamaica, it was in for women to have hair on the legs, right? That was sexy. I know growing up in America in my time, I was born in the 80s and pretty much grew up in the 90s. That was not in fashion, right? But now we see that I'm the millennial generation. I believe the Gen Zs, I think, after me, are bringing in this whole, growing out the hair thing on the legs, under the arms, and all this stuff, and making it a whole thing. It's part of, like, I don't know, feminism movement or whatever the case may be. And this is not a judgment on it, right? Like, do whatever you want to do with your body. But my whole point is that these things change depending on where you are in the world and the time at which you're growing up, because fashion changes, these trends change. So you can really just decide however you're showing up in the world. God ordained it for you to be that way. So make it beautiful. You are the standard of beauty. You make it so, because nobody gave these artists, and even the person that created the whole concept of race, putting people into this box of white and this box of black and whatnot, nobody gave them permission. Like, they decided to come up with this thing, And other people complied. Some other people probably didn't comply, right? They were obviously in the minority, right? Even now, we have a certain idea, like, every time Lizzo makes great music, but every time she's doing a thing, it's always like, about her body. They want to talk about her body. And you see now, even like with a lot of wellness ads, I'm pretty sure if you're on social media, you've seen a lot of wellness ads where it's either workout apps or fitness wear, anything like that. They're using larger models now, right? Because this is now the trend, right? This is what they want to do. You see in Hollywood, there's a lot of changes in Hollywood happening right now, where you're watching shows where there's more LGBTQ, like intimate relations, way more than when I was growing up, right? And I'm only 36. This is the changes I'm seeing in my lifetime. You're seeing more diversity in terms of race in these, and not only the topics they're talking about is very like social justice oriented on a lot of these shows on NBC, CBS, all the things, CW, like all of that, right? A lot more than before, right? Because they just decided this is what we need to do. Now this is on trend. Now this is in vogue, right? And so everyone is basically, they're complicit, right? They put it on, people watch, we're all complicit to this evolution. And so I think when it comes to loving on our bodies and appreciating the fact that our bodies work, because I always say all the time, like, the food is not here for our entertainment. The food is here to actually nourish our cells. Our cells need nourishment in order to work properly. So I know there's some folks in my community that are talking about how stressed they are, how fatigued they are, they're tired. Well, the centers of the body, of the cells in your body that actually produce energy, is the mitochondria, right? And every cell of the body, you have mitochondria making energy. In order for it to make energy, it needs nutrients from omega-3 fatty acids, from leafy greens, from berries, right? And there's other things that play, but that's like basically the foundation, the nutritional foundation. If it doesn't have those things, it has no energy to give you, So we need to love on ourselves so that the body works properly. And complaining that something doesn't look like someone else because somebody decided that that's what beauty looks like this week, this month, this year, this decade. You know what I'm saying? It's just really crazy. And we need to constantly remind ourselves, deprogram ourselves from that whole conversation, because it could really mess you up. And it leads you away from like what really matters, and just kind of warps your whole thing. Like, for example, I've heard or we've even talked about on the show of Black women using chemicals on their skin to whiten it. Now, I know there's a financial dynamic here, there's racism at play, all of this, which has psychologically affected people. Totally understand all of that. At the same time, when we recognize that we're hating on ourselves, right? Because when self-hatred gets to a place where you can't really turn back, right? Like you're just like stuck there and you don't see another option. I would really encourage you to explore that you are the beauty standard. So for me personally, I've done this a lot, to be honest with you. I grew up, I was chubby, and, I wasn't really feeling less of myself because of it. And I'm wondering, like, because I hear some people talk about how, I was a fat kid and that bothered me so much. I can't say it really bothered me. Like, I was into fitness and I wanted to, be tight, because I was watching Beachbody and I saw these people, but the thing about Beachbody was it looked fun. So I was really reaching for the feeling of fun and movement, right? Growing up, I was basically locked up in the house all the time. in Queens because my mom was so scared she wouldn't really let me out. And where was I going to go? If I went to the park, they're selling drugs over there, and there's kids I don't even, in New York, for me, we didn't have the life like you see on TV where kids are going to kids' houses and playing and doing all the sports on the weekends and stuff. I didn't have that childhood, right? So, so when I'm watching Beachbody and these people are together and they're being active and this, that's, I was looking for the feeling of fun, not necessarily hating my body. I never hated my body. What I did hate was hair on my legs. And then to find out that, my mom says, back in the day that was a thing. And what that did for me, because I know how much money I've paid to get rid of it, how much pain I've endured to get rid of it, and just hating myself because of it, because it's like, why I hated myself, not for the hair, but for paying other people to inflict pain on me because I didn't appreciate myself. So I was hating on me for that. Like, man, Sam, you whack for that. Like, yo, if you don't have your back, who's gonna have your back, right? And this is just whack. So to hear that, like, ancestrally in my mom's time, this was accepted, and I'm here trying to inflict all this pain, it just did not make sense. And so I'm grateful to have learned that lesson. It was basically tuition to learn that lesson, because I did spend thousands of dollars to eventually get to that point, right? But sometimes we pay tuition to the University of Life to learn some of these lessons. But to go back to basically what we were talking about, when I was reading these articles, and these authors and this book, Fear in the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fatphobia, is trying to position this whole thing. It had me question, is fatphobia rooted in white supremacy and anti-Black racism? Is this true? Because that's what they were saying. Do we agree with that? And I would love to hear from you. If you are on my Instagram, on my email list, in my Facebook group, YouTube, wherever you are watching this, find me, send me a note, comment. I would love to know what your thoughts are on this, but I'm going to give you my opinion. I read this book, Fear in the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fatphobia, and I did not get the connection that she was trying to make, that fatphobia was somehow tied to racism, right? Because in the book, she talks about the fact that, a few things. First of all, on the continent of Africa, depending on where you're from, what country you're from, they tend to have different body types. There are certain countries where people tend to be on the skinny side. So think of like Whitney Houston, right? She has more of a skinny body type and very slender and long. There are countries in Africa where we've all seen, those people tend to be like that. Then you have people who are more rounder and tend to maybe pack on pounds easier because of just their body type. That's also prevalent in certain countries in Africa. So in terms of the continent of Africa, you have a diverse group of people with a diverse body types, So she talks about this. And she also talks about, there was definitely a lot of racism. You can read in that book, it's clear we have a racist history, right? And certain people, bad behavior, right? But there was a time when, being big was in vogue, and that was seen as beautiful. And there was a reason behind that, right? There's always a reason behind that. But there were people who saw Black women who were big, African women who were big, and thought they were beautiful as well. And then that changed. But it wasn't because of racism. It just was because of they're changing in trend or fashion, right? So racism is happening, and the trend of what's in style in terms of being big or skinny or big or skinny is changing, right? And so she did not, for me, she did not make that connection for me. I don't necessarily think fat phobia is rooted in white supremacy and anti-black racism. Anti-black racism exists. White supremacy, and how it's affecting us in so many ways, this clearly exists. And you see that as you dig in and you study and reflect on all the different ways this thing of even hierarchies like that we have of in different ways, which I won't go into on this because we've talked about this in some other shows, but this thing is going to go on too long if I go on too many tangents and definitions. But these things exist, but fat phobia is not a part of it, right? So specifically when it comes to even the racism part, like we can see just people just acting bad. Like one of the things in her book that you get to read, if you decide to pick it up and read it, she talks about a Black woman known as Hottentot, which we've all heard of before, who was basically paraded around the world because she was big. And people touched her and prodded her and looked at her as like a spectator, very similar to how we treat the zoo, right? So vegans and vegan activists totally understand this whole thing. Like when they talk about white supremacy and how that plays out in veganism, and just like not even just vegan, like speciesism, I should say. They understand this, right? There's a lot of parallels, and there's even some book recommendations I could drop for you if you want to go down that whole rabbit hole. But anyway, this woman Hottentot, right? She was sold by a Black man who owned slaves. Okay, so there's a lot of dynamics going on here, and so I don't feel like she made the racist point necessarily, but she did make the point of what's in style and what's not in style, how disgusting people could be to one another, and just the whole idea of like judging ourselves based off of somebody else's definition of what beauty is. It just is ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. So yeah, and I could go on and on with some other things in this book, but I'm gonna skip that part just to go into this point that we should learn from Lizzo and do what feels good, right? Even Tabitha Brown, but I want to focus on Lizzo right now because even folks who aren't as big as she is are poking and prodding at themselves, saying this doesn't look right, I hate this part of my body, and they're at a healthy body weight. They're practicing healthy habits, right? And even someone like Lizzo, the most important thing she can do is practice healthy habits and love herself, because if you're stressed out about the way you look, it is actually working against your health goals. So we should learn from her, do what feels good, and do what makes you not only do what makes you feel good, but take care of your body and your brain, right? So all of the practices that we do for a healthy cardiovascular system and to maintain a healthy weight is also good for our brain. You want to give it the love that it needs, because ultimately the thing that needs to be fit for the rest of your life to have quality life, I would say, is your cardiovascular health and your brain health. I mean, that's how you function, right? That's how you function. That's how you maintain independence. So we need to practice body acceptance while also practicing healthy habits. And within that, we need to focus on metabolic health instead of trying to look like so and so on Instagram and blah blah blah. Now I'm gonna say this because I have done this with myself. I'm an integrative nutrition coach, and part of my training, we were encouraged to try different things and experiment. And I do, um, I encourage that with my clients as well. Like if you're feeling drawn to a certain thing, experiment with it, but don't do it with a sense of I hate my body. Do it with a sense of I wonder how that would work. So like I read Dr. Brooke Goldner's books, and I was intrigued by the fact that she had her clients drinking like 90 something ounces of water a day. And I'm like, wow, I wonder if I could do that. And so I tried and I learned how to do that. I read about Tessa Thompson and how she, put on like 10 pounds of muscle mass for Thor Love and Thunder or something like that. And I was like, wow. So I have a scale that shows my body fat percentage and my, water weight and all this, right? And so I was like, oh, I wonder if I could convert, which obviously, you can't make fat into muscle. But basically, what I'm saying, if you understand my creative license when it comes to speech, right? I'm from Queens, so I like to be a little creative with my language. But I wanted to basically take uh, the 10%, I think it was 10% or 5%, I forget what it was that I was trying to do. But basically, like the same thing that Tessa did, except I wanted to take it from the fat, right? So have my fat number come down that much and my muscle percentage go up that same much. And I was able to accomplish that, but I got COVID and I couldn't figure out if it was COVID or if it was what I was doing. Because otherwise, I would let y'all know what I did, but I don't know what worked for me, to be honest. And I would not encourage you to get COVID to get there. But it was actually getting COVID that had me like, yo, why am I doing this? And the only reason I did it was because I was inspired by Tessa. And I'm always inspired by movies. I love movies. I love arts and entertainment, right? I love going to the theater when I'm in New York. I like dance. I like music, everything arts and entertainment. I love all of that, right? So and I get inspired by it. And so I was inspired by her. It's something I just wanted to try and I wanted to have fun. What does it mean to do this? What is the journey like? Is it even possible? And what does that look like for me, And so, but it wasn't like, ooh, I hate my body, I and but there was a time like I think like my early 30s where I was starting to see probably like I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I was starting to see my back getting, like almost like dropping a little bit. I'm like, what is this? It's different because you're getting older and your body's different. There's things that we recognize that we did not have before. And so it's a new thing. So it's like, oh, what is this? But I would encourage you not to hate on it and just try to get to understand it. Is it a problem? Is it life-threatening? If it's life-threatening and it's a problem, then definitely talk to your doctor or a health coach, read a book, something, put a game plan together, right? But if it's not life-threatening, then yeah, have fun exploring what it would look like to tighten things up or do whatever, but don't hate on the back, because when I was sick, all I was like was, listen, I want food. I want all sorts of food. Like I want to eat everything. I don't care about fat. I don't care about anything. I want to eat. And I couldn't eat. I had no energy to eat, right? I was dealing with fatigue, and people who've had COVID, maybe you can understand, where your body literally, everything shuts down. Like I remember standing at the sink trying to wash an apple so I could cut it. And I was like in tears because I was shaking just trying to stand up to wash this apple. Like my muscles could not take it, couldn't just take me standing there. And it was tough. It was really hard because in my head, I was starting to get into a space where because I think I was sick for like a week and a half, but it was like the longest week and a half. I was starting to get mentally in a space where I felt like I would never get better, and I was getting really scared. But clearly I got better, and it was, it was a long journey, and it wasn't a fun one. But when I looked at my numbers, because I actually checked, because I was looking really skinny every time I went in the bathroom. I'm like, yo, what is this? I wonder what happened, Did I ever reach the goal? And now I can't even work out because I have no energy. And I checked my numbers and I was there, and I'm like, what the hell is this for? If I'm stuck here in the bed, I can't do nothing. And so I just want to like encourage you, love on your body. Right now I'm in physical therapy for an ankle that I sprained twice. Um, I had to go to the orthopedist for a neck issue because my spine was straight at the neck because I'm working on the computer all the time and whatnot. Not, I guess, not doing enough yoga, not doing enough stretches. So now I learned, like, there are certain activities I need to do on a regular basis. Exercise is not optional, and certain types of exercises I need to be doing. And having the limbs to do that, having my cardiovascular system working so that nothing is, hurting. Because when you have hurt, you appreciate what doesn't hurt. You appreciate what you're not feeling, and you're not feeling it because it's working properly. And I know some of you out there can relate, where you've worked in jobs that are just thankless jobs, right? It's like you do such a great job, you don't get any words of affirmation, but as soon as you mess something up or something doesn't go to plan, then people come in to you with critiques and all this stuff, right? Thankless people, right? So, or just not appreciative. Well, we treat our bodies basically the same way, if you think about it, and we really need to stop that. And so I just want to encourage you to love on your body, focus on metabolic health, because ultimately this is what's really most important. Over fat loss is metabolic health. And why, if you want to dig into why, I wrote about this in my article on BMI. I'll post the link in the description. But you have fit people at different sizes. So there's this doctor named Dr. William Lee, and he talks about this. Like, so we've seen fit people who are skinny, but did you know sumo wrestlers, apparently they don't get chronic disease? That's what he said, right? That they don't get chronic disease. And so, he makes the case that you can have fit people at different sizes. So basically, being big is not necessarily a death sentence, right? So we kind of need to get that out of our minds, because you can be big and have healthy habits and still be big, because there are different reasons why you are big, right? There are different reasons. It could be, it's like your body type, different factors. Medication. I mean, honestly, that's what I see a lot in our community, is medication is kind of holding people back from experiencing the excess fat release that they're looking for. And, they may be in a situation where to not take that medication is not even an option, which is understandable. So, as long as we understand that being big is not necessarily a death sentence, right? We burn fat while we sleep, yet where are people really focusing on the sleep? Like, there's no sleep revolution except from the Nat Bishop. So I want to turn your focus and attention over to Trisha Hershey of the Nat Ministry. She has a book called Rest is Resistance, and I'll put the link for that in the description. But if you want to release excess fat and you're not sleeping and you're doing all these workouts and things, you're just doing the most, right? You just probably need to rest. You need to rest. Like, focus on that first. We don't always have to do more. Sometimes we need to do less. And that's the word for today. Okay. That's the word for today. Thank you for joining me today. And I would love to hear in the comments what your thoughts are on this whole conversation, like even like applying racism to everything. Racism exists, And there are things that we need to do about it. The big one is reparations, which nobody wants to talk about, and nobody in politics actually wants to do. The only person who was talking about was Marianne Williamson, and she didn't get any votes. So here we are. Like, if you're going to talk about racism, a wrong has been done. Everyone understands that a wrong has been done and it has never been rectified. But to go around and apply racism to everything, like, not everything is racism. And Fatphobia, I would say it does not have racial origins. But I would love to know if you read the book and got something different from it, or maybe you have a different thought process on the whole thing. I would love to hear. Take care. Thanks for joining.